department is developing a water team. And this is a really good example of, I think, how far we're coming on working together. What I've done is I've pulled together more than half a dozen agencies within USDA, the National Agricultural Statistical Survey, Rural Development, Agricultural Research Service, just to name a few. And we're sitting down and we're all talking about, for the first time, and this is some political appointees, but mostly really talented career staff. For the first time, we're talking about what do each of our agencies bring to the table in terms of expertise, in terms of program dollars, in terms of authorities that touch water? And how do we break out of our silos and work together to support the Secretary's vision for protecting water resources? And I have to tell you, after the first meeting, we held a meeting for 3 hours where each of the agencies stood up and basically explained what they did. I asked the group, and again, these are people who had been working at USDA for 20, sometimes 30 years, in some cases 30 years. How many of you learned something new about what another agency did here? And every single hand in the room shot up. And since then, I have to say, we've had the most motivational meetings. We just had one last Friday where we were talking about how can we link our programs together to achieve some specific goals. This group of people is highly energized and highly motivated because they see the power of working together, and they recognize that with the scarce resources that we have, especially in this budget environment, we have an opportunity to actually be more effective with either the same amount of resources or even fewer resources because we're being very strategic. So not only is it motivating, but I think it's also going to deliver the results that the Secretary is adamant about our delivering. Another thing that we're doing differently at USDA, and this comes out of a direction we got from the 2008 Farm Bill, we have stood up the Office of Environmental Markets. We were directed in the Farm Bill, the Secretary was directed to establish a framework for ecosystem service markets to thrive in this country, recognizing that in many cases private landowners will be in the position of generating a lot of the credits for nutrients, for habitat protection, for carbon sequestration. So we are working with our partners across the federal government, EPA, USGS, NOAA, you name it. There are a lot of different stakeholders, as you might imagine, who are very interested in collaborating and establishing this framework. And you know, it's hard not to get too excited. We don't want to overemphasize what a game changer this could be, but I think as some of you recognize, the extent to which we can monetize the value that a healthy watershed provides to the environment could be, is extremely important and could in fact drive a lot of the accelerated conservation that we are all looking for. So that is another thing that we're doing differently, and we're not just sitting in a room dreaming this stuff up, we're actually starting to apply it. The first real opportunity that we're focusing on right now is again in the Chesapeake Bay, where the TMDLs that are being developed by the states under the direction of EPA are creating a market for nutrient credits. And so I think that we're going to start with nutrient markets, water quality markets there, but we can see additional markets. We're looking at how we can stack additional benefits on top of that. And I encourage all of you to be closely watching this and to be participating as we develop, as we do these experiments in the Chesapeake Bay and in other watersheds across the country, so that we can get your input into figuring out how do we make these markets work best for all of us. I want to just quickly move on here and just to say that foundational to what we were continuing to do within NRCS and at USDA are partnerships. And I think that partnerships are a priority in the watershed programs, not only for sharing in the cost, but also because our programs are based on partnerships with local sponsors. Who propose the projects, who are supposed to manage them after the installation. So partnerships are important to getting the initial expertise and ideas, but also to ensuring that the outcomes are enduring. I think that with these new approaches that we're taking, there are obviously a lot of barriers that we're facing, and I just want to identify them. Some of them have been mentioned, but they're worth noting because we have to monitor them, we have to keep our eye out for them and work through them. One are the institutional barriers. Agencies within USDA, even, and across the federal government, we have to change our behavior. We have to break out of silos. We have to let go of our brand in some case. It can be a very uncomfortable position to be in. But again, I think we're starting to see that working together, we win much bigger than working apart. We also need, in the federal government, we need to simplify access to our programs. You as users, the user interface is not very good. You have to come in through myriad portals. See, certainly even within our NRCS, sometimes 20 different programs, 20 different entry points. That is not a winning solution. We have to make it much simpler for state and local governments, for NGOs, to be able to come in and access our programs. But I think that, one thing that John Carson sort of alluded to, accountability is a key word in this administration. It's a touchstone. We're being held to account for delivering results. And again, I think accountability is our friend when we realize that, that we are going to get much greater results working together. And so I think that is why you see, whether we're working on the Chesapeake Bay or Great Lakes, people are willing to sit down and roll up their sleeves and do the tough thinking. And it really is quite remarkable. I want to say, though, full disclosure, I've been talking about what we're doing differently. And in many cases, what we're really doing is we're going back to basic principles. I think that many of us are familiar with the term, everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten. Well, at USDA and certainly NRCS, we use the phrase, everything we need to know about taking care of natural resources. We learned from Hugh Hammond Bennett. Now, Hugh Hammond Bennett was the founder of NRCS. He was a soil scientist, and he also, by the way, got his start in that same part of Wisconsin that has been so wonderfully mentioned twice today. He was a true visionary. Bennett was a true visionary who is properly referred to as the father of conservation on private lands. His vision is entirely relevant to the next generation, the 21st century generation of conservation. And he lived by 5 principles. They are, first, you can't do conservation from behind a desk. Good science matters. We can't treat resource concerns in isolation. Local leadership is essential. And if we take care of the land will take care of us. Now, foundational to all of this was, in Bennett's mind, the importance of partnerships. And in my opening remarks, I mentioned that the Federal Interagency Floodplain Management Task Force has grown ever more conscious of the need to have all interested stakeholders at the table in deciding how to meet current and future challenges. And only then, once the decisions are made, these partners become even more essential to getting the word out about opportunities, funding, new programs, technologies, and getting the work done on the ground. Water management issues of any kind, much less those that affect floodplain issues, must be resolved by a wide array of stakeholders, particularly those on the ground. No one has a corner on all the good ideas or strategies for success, but there is no doubt that by coming together, we will find more of them, these good ideas, than by standing apart. So I leave you with that and with Bennett's 5 principles. I think that I certainly keep them at my desk every day, and they remind me to keep it simple, to get it done. And I want to thank you all here for inviting me to participate in this, and I look forward to participating in a good round of question and answers. Thank you.